Hello and welcome back to part 4 of my restoration series on this pony tractor. So I was just running it. That was the end of the last video. So anyway, once it runs great. It's still very temperamental on startup, but I want to get the wood out of the forest on Saturday, so we're going to ignore that for the moment, because once it runs fine. So the first thing I need to do is I need to get the 3-point, the hitch, the fenders, all that back on, and then I want to get the lighting. I have lights coming for it. Get that done. So anyway, let's start by putting the 3-point lever back on, because I think that's the next thing that needs to be put on. Time to put the drawbar on. It's really easy. Just have to lift it up, put those 2 hooks over the back. Well, that's how it is in your mind anyway. It's really big and it weighs more than 50 kilos. So. That was easy. I only have 2 bolts right now, but I'll be getting more before we go to work. Having a toolbox is really handy. Just throw like spare pins and stuff in it. And also tools. And then they're always with you. I have these lights to go on the back, and I need to make something to hold them, so this is what I've come up with. So let me walk you through what I've done for the electrics, in case you might want to make the same kind of system. Now what is a little bit difficult about this tractor is it is a 6-volt, so parts are a little harder to find for that. But I've got this Varta battery, 300 amp, 70 amp output. Technically that should be enough, but it is currently not turning the starter motor, but I think that's because the starter motor has been a bit too jerry-rigged. So this tractor has high beams, low beams, running lights, and then on the back we have blinkers and tail lights, and it also has a horn. So I added this battery cutoff switch just because eventually once I get a new starter motor or get that starter motor fixed properly, this battery will always be in here, and that way I can disconnect the battery, leave the battery in here, and it's not going to drain. So on the dash here, obviously that's the amp meter, it works. The oil gauge, of course, that's the choke, that's the starter for the motor. This engages like that. Now the spark plugs get power, that turns the tractor off. So that gives the spark plugs and the coil power. Now they don't have power. So I did these three. So the middle one, tail lights, and I'll show you better in the dark just because I think that'll be kind of cool to see these lights in the pitch black. And then left blinker and right blinker. The reason why I went with two one-way switches instead of a two-way switch or a proper blinker switch is because, well, A, they're what I have, but also because this way I can have both on, or I can just have one on or none on. So the horn works sometimes. The switch is a little crappy, but alright, maybe it's not working right now. Ah, there we go. There we go. So there we have running lights, which I don't quite understand why you'd want those, especially on a tractor. But anyway, they're there, so I hooked them up. It was a $2 light bulb. So there are the low beams. And I went for the yellow because personally I like the yellow a lot better than white lights. Like this, I like this color a lot better than LEDs. Also, LEDs weren't available, so. And this light actually is from 1969, so that's another reason I got a yellow, so that they match, because I wanted to use the one bulb that was still on here, the other one was blown. And then high beams. The high beams aren't much brighter, they're just shining a little higher. So, then in here it's a bit of a mess, but basically I have power coming up from the battery. It is going to this switch, obviously, and if the battery's not connected, it's coming from the generator. So, can't really see what's going on in there, but basically for the blinkers I just have down in there a little relay. I'll show you that better in a minute. And it is hooked up to one switch, and then I just, with that brown wire at the top, link the two switches together, and then at the bottom is the wire that goes out to the blinkers. And then I do have it fused. I have a 20 amp fuse because it needs a 10, but I blew the 10 on the blinkers, taillights, and horn. And then I think it's a 25 amp fuse, or maybe it's a 20 amp fuse as well, that is on the headlights. And obviously the ignition is not fused. And so I use this wire. Now up front here I use this kind of braided plastic stuff, and that's okay. And actually when I was first looking at wiring these up, I thought, I found this wire. This is just lamp cable. It's got 3 wires in it. That's 0.75 millimeters squared. I found it and I said, oh well, I can use that, I'll just have to strip the black off. And then I was looking at it and I thought, well, why bother stripping the black off, just leave it as is. So I used zinc on the bolts, just folded over and hammered. That will hold it. Now you don't need to use wire that's specific for vehicles. It is important that it's the wire, like a lot of house wire is one solid piece of copper, which I prefer for wiring in houses. But for this application, you want to have the one that is many little strands because it is more flexible. So that is what I use. It's nothing special. I did buy some special for vehicle wire just because it wasn't any more expensive and it was something I just added to an order. But you can just use regular house wire as long as it is the many little strands instead of the one solid piece of copper, because wire is wire. So then the generator, every tractor or any vehicle is going to be different, but most generators are probably going to have 3 wires. That's the ground, that's the positive, and the exciter is that green one down there. And then the box is in there. And that's pretty easy. The diagram for that's in the manual. But yeah, that's what I did. And obviously the starter, because this is a hand starter, you just pull that. It just needs from the battery, whereas this is going to the this is going up to the ignition, and this is from the battery. Now a lot of starters will have a big solenoid on here instead of this, so that you just have a little wire and a button. But this one you actually have to pull the lever or pull out the thing right there. Not turned on right now, so. But anyway, that is the wiring. Pretty simple. So yeah, looking forward to seeing those lights in the dark because it's pretty cool. This is the relay I bought. I bought 2 thinking I needed the 2, but I really only needed 1. So there are a few different types of flasher relays out there, and obviously there's electronic ones as well for LEDs. But this one just has 3 prongs, so we have L, X, and P. X is power in, so that is connected to the positive. L is power to the flasher switches. And then P would be to go to your dashboard light. Like in cars, you have the little green arrow on the dashboard. There's nothing like that on the tractor, so I'm just not using P. So that is the relay I'm using, and that is how I have it wired up. Oh, there we go. That's at least 3 of these trailer loads, plus a trailer load and 2 other trailers that are much bigger and heavier, plus the half-hour drive here. So, running smoothly so far anyway, and we're loaded up, so we gotta go unload now, and then we'll continue on this afternoon. I just got home from 2 days in the woods, not full days, but a few hours each day, and about 2 or 3 hours plowing and working with a disc today. So it worked well, drove home fine, a few little things that need to be tuned up, but pretty happy with that. This is the new starter motor I bought for the tractor. So this is a Paris Ron D10L28. You can sort of see right there. The 28 is a little harder to see, but it is there, plus other starter motors that I saw for this track that were being sold for this tractor were D10L 28s. So on the Paris Ron, the D10 means it is about 10 centimeters wide. You can have D9s, D8s, and of course bigger than D10s. I'm not sure if all ponies are like this, but my tractor needs a D10. I was looking at some D8s, D9s, but the spacing between the two bolts that you bolted onto the tractor with, they were different. So anyway, the L means that it is a mechanical. It has the lever instead of a solenoid. And I don't know what the 28 stands for. It's probably just an identification code as to this particular motor. So it is likely a 6 volt. I did get it to spin on the 6 volt battery, but jumper cables, and they're so beaten up on the tips that they don't ever work. So I'm gonna go and mount this. I'm not gonna like take it apart and paint it or anything, because it works as is and it looks pretty decent as is. If I was gonna like paint it, obviously this part would not get painted and this would be black. I might still do that, but I'd like to make sure it's actually gonna work before I do that. So let's go mount it on the tractor. Taking the starter motors off is really easy. Bolt, electrical connection, cable for the starter. The only annoying thing is you have to undo the oil line here. And this is like the 8th time I've done this, so pretty good at it by now. Come on. Well, that's gonna have to be moved, but ta-da! So, I'd like to talk about the tools I used for a minute, because this is the first time, what you've seen me doing to this tractor, it is the first time I've worked on a vehicle. Before I did this tractor, I've worked on a few drills, maybe a few other power tools, sanders, that kind of stuff, but I've never worked on like cars or trucks or tractors or anything. That's part of the reason why I filmed it, because why not film myself doing it for the first time? So I'd like to talk about the tools I've used, because obviously when I started this project I didn't really have any tools to work on a tractor with, so I had to buy everything. The tools I used the most: standard old spanners, box end, open end. These were the most useful tool to work on this tractor. I mean, if you are on a very tight budget and you can only afford a few tools, these are the ones to buy, because they're just so handy. Crescent wrenches, they're pretty handy too, but I always feel like I'm wrecking the bolts or the wrench when I'm using these, because there's just so much slop in them. So yeah, I did get recently a ratcheting wrench, and maybe some places these would be handy, but I don't see the value to spending 3 to 4 times the amount of money on one of these over just a standard spanner. I did get a ratchet. I actually bought this quite a while ago. So this is the Wura Zyklop, whatever it is, 1/2 inch. And why I bought this one is because that is how you shift the directions. It doesn't have a little thing here. That is how you shift the directions, and to me that is a much smarter design, because the one that you have to shift the little directions, now maybe I'm just biased, but the one that I was using before, it would, like, you turn it a few times and it would jump to the locked position. So that's why I bought this one. Plus it is all metal. There is no rubber overmolding. I do not really like the rubber overmolding. I'd much prefer a straight metal tool. This was pretty handy, because you can put a pipe on the end of this and get a lot more torque. And this is like 20 bucks, whereas a high torque impact wrench is like 250. Which I did buy impact wrenches. Bought this one. This was 250 euros. It was definitely not necessary to work on a tractor. I mean, the only place where I'd say that this would be on your list of first tools to buy would be if you're buying like a semi-truck that you need to change the tires on. Yeah, I definitely used this a few times, and I've used it on another project, and I will use it in the future, so I'm glad I bought this, but I didn't need to buy it when I bought it. But, oh well, I have it now. It's a nice tool. This one was a lot more useful. This did most of the work that I need an impact wrench for on that tractor. This even had the power to take out the rear lug nuts on the rear wheels on the tractor. Now, for tightening, this does not have much torque, and actually a lot of people will say, and I have to agree, it is just much better to use hand tools for tightening than power tools, because you know exactly how much torque you are putting on it. And speaking of torque, for working on engines and transmissions, you're going to need a torque wrench. Now, you don't necessarily have to spend a fortune on a torque wrench, or even buy one. I borrowed this one from a friend, and you can definitely rent them in bigger cities, but you're going to need a torque wrench for stuff like engines. And also, depending on how new the vehicle is, will depend on how many different things it says that you need a torque wrench for. On this tractor, the head gasket, the flywheel, maybe the piston, not the pistons, the connecting rods, and maybe a few things in the transmission it said you needed a torque wrench for.
but it only stated the torque for the head gasket and the flywheel. So yeah, it's a 1952 tractor. I'm pretty sure that they probably, a lot of things in that manual they just assumed you'd know, or it didn't matter. But anyway, the spanners like these were the tools that were the most useful. And also another tool that was strangely very useful was this slotted screwdriver with the hammer end on it. This didn't really do any screwdriving. It was mainly used as a pry bar, a scraper, that kind of stuff. And then for the sockets, I just bought an impact rated set, as you see here. Why I bought an impact rated set? Because I didn't want to have to buy 2 sets. And I knew that I was going to use impact wrenches. Plus, there's no reason why you can't use an impact rated socket with hand tools. So, those are the tools I used. Another tool that is really handy, especially if you're working on older vehicles, or if you want to be working with hydraulics, or pretty much anywhere where you're going to need O-ring seals, a good pair of calipers. These are just so handy to measure seals and stuff. Mine has the watch on it. They smear grease all over it. A lot of them will just have, there'll just be a line and it just slides and you just read it. I don't think that those are quite as precise, because this thing, you know exactly if you're at like 11.0 or 11.98 or 96. So it's pretty handy. Then the last tool that I'm going to say is really useful for beginning is a 1/4 inch socket set. These aren't very expensive. I mean, this is kind of like a mid-range. KS Tools, they make a lot of stuff that is available here. But just a 1/4 inch socket set. Why is this so handy? This did all the electrical work, and most vehicles, most of their bolts are only 6mm or 8mm, and we have a 14, a 13, a 10, and 11. So for a lot of bolts, this little ratchet will get in there. Plus, because it's only 1/4 inch, it's a lot smaller compared to, so here's a 1/2 inch, here's the 1/4 inch. There is a size difference. Plus, also the screwdriver, this you can put stuff on, like you have Phillips and slotted, and it's just really handy. This has been really handy. And also, this, using the impact driver, I'm not sure if you saw, but you saw me using that, not sure if you saw me using. In the videos, I showed a lot of work that I was doing with that little Makita 12-volt impact. It was an impact driver, not an impact wrench, and I have to say that it was probably more useful than the impact wrench, because the impact wrench is just so big and heavy. When you put the 1/2 inch sockets on it, it's kind of difficult to get into tight spaces, whereas the little 1/4 inch hex drive impact drivers with an adapter to take the 1/4 inch sockets, they are just so handy. Like for, again, it's for electricals and that kind of stuff, but most of the bolts that I was doing on that tractor were related to the electrics or something where a small tool was handy. If you're working on more complex vehicles, and especially new vehicles, there's going to be a lot of specialty tools that you're going to need. But that's the nice thing about this older technology, is that they didn't make you have to go out and buy all these specialized tools. And also, like, this toolbox is all I carry with me to the field, and even this is superfluous. Like, I could really just take the crescent wrench, or 2 crescent wrenches, a hammer, and a screwdriver, and I could do pretty much any field repair I'd ever want to. Or just, like, take a handful of spanners. But, like, with this toolbox, I could basically take that tractor to pieces and put it back together again, minus the few places where you need a torque wrench. So, it is nice how in the olden days, and I hope that, again, one day we'll see it in the future, when machines are made so that, like, if it breaks down in the field, you can fix it. Like, you don't have to take it to a specialized shop or that kind of stuff. Now, part of getting that reliability is it has to be bare bones, very simple, which, again, I really like on this tractor. It is just simple. For the amount I want to use it, it is very nice that it is just a simple tractor. There is no electronics on it. There's no silly gadgets. It's just a carburetor. It works. And if it doesn't work, there is a very good reason why it's not working. Like all those times I spent out there at night in the cold trying to start it. Turns out all it was the, what do you call those? The points, that's it. The points weren't adjusted properly. As soon as I adjusted the points, it started right up. So, it's just nice to have something that you can work on and that is just simple. And it's also nice that everything on that tractor is steel or brass. There is no, or cast iron. There's no plastic on it aside from the electrics. And even that, the electrics I took off, which were the original, they were no good. But a lot of those, they were rubber insulated or cork insulated. They weren't plastic. So I hope you've enjoyed watching me restore this tractor. I had a lot of fun doing it. Filming it, it was fun enough, but it was a bit difficult because the only camera I have, or I had when I was filming it, was this one. It would have been easier with the camera I'm currently filming on, which is a GoPro Hero 3. But I have this one now, so if I like this GoPro camera enough, I'll get more cameras so I can film more. But anyway, it was very fun doing this project. Like I said, it's the first time I've ever worked on vehicles, and I learned a lot. I definitely know a lot more now than I did before I even bought the tractor. And not just how to fix it, but also on how vehicles work. Like, before I bought the tractor, I didn't really know. Like, I had a general idea of how an engine works, but now that I've taken it apart and I've seen it, I know exactly how it works. So, this kind of work is very interesting. I definitely don't want to do it professionally, but since I'm a farmer anyway, I'm going to be working on tractors a lot, and it is very interesting to like work on your own vehicles because you can do it how you want on your own speed. So I hope that this maybe inspired a few of you to go out and find an old tractor to restore. Now, first time restoring, I think it's a good idea to buy something that's very common, like a pony or a little gray Fergie or a Massey 35, or like in the US a Fordson, whatever, 9N, 8N, those were really common. Or like a Farmall. We don't really have the early McCormick Deering International Harvester tractors here. There are now what are they? The McCormick 1020 Deerings. Those are here, but they're a little more expensive because they're older. So getting something like the Pony or a little gray Ferguson, or what would be other ones that would be very good. Obviously in the US a Deere Model A or Model B, but something that's really common because parts are easy to get for it, and also if you screw it up, you're not screwing up something where there's only 20 of them left. Like, say for example, I don't know, like make it up, one that there's like only a few left, like a Rumley oil pull or something like that. And also, obviously, those rare ones are a lot more expensive. So, I enjoyed it. I'm going to do more videos on this kind of stuff. Maybe not right away, because the next vehicle I need to buy is a road vehicle. And we'll see. I might buy an interesting road vehicle that will be interesting to work on as well and need some interesting work. And I might film that. So, stick around, because there will be more mechanical work on this channel. Maybe not for a year or two, but there will definitely be more tractors, perhaps even diggers and cars. Obviously all the oldest stuff that I can get, the most interesting stuff, which to me the most interesting is the most mechanical, the most simple, the most big heavy iron, that kind of stuff. And also, speaking of different content for my channel, there will be more woodworking content and like actual projects. Doing the tool reviews is all fine and dandy, but tool reviews are only so interesting. So I'm going to do more project videos. So if you like woodworking or mechanical or even metalworking, there will be that kind of stuff over the next year or two on my channel. I know I haven't been posting a lot lately, but it's mainly because I've been working so hard on this project, and also I've had other projects that I've been working on. Plus I don't really have any tools at the moment to review. The lights just came back on. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.